It has now been a few weeks since Florida Governor Ron DeSantis flew more than 50 migrants from Texas to Martha's Vineyard, an island off the coast of Massachusetts. A lot of Republicans were happy with this move. In fact, Donald Trump embraced it, and Mitch McConnell said it should happen more often. So with so many Republicans lining up in terms of using migrants as human props, what does that really mean politically? And what, if anything, should Democrats be doing about this? Well, here to talk about it is Calvin Dark. He's a Democratic strategist. He's also the co-founder of RC Communications. Calvin, thanks for being with us. Have you been surprised by the Republican reaction?
Unfortunately, no. It just echoes the principles behind the policies that they've been pushing for the last few years. You know, it's cruel and inhumane, and I think we all remember that 4 years ago, 2018, it was a similar situation. It was the caravans. You know, for the 2-3 weeks before the elections, the caravans were coming, and of course, we didn't hear anything else about them after it. So it's a different situation, but unfortunately, the same values and messaging.
And some of the messaging from Republicans is that they are so delighted to see sanctuary cities now somehow getting migrants that they weren't expecting. So there's an anger not just towards the migrants, but towards the people who welcome them with open arms.
Yes, because I think that the sanctuary cities, apart from where, whatever you may think about our immigration system, I think the principle behind sanctuary cities is what America's founded on, being a welcoming place. And I think this whole idea of trolling democratic cities, shaming supposedly sanctuary cities. It's unfortunate because it has immigrants at the heart of it. But what I was pleased with was, if you take the example with Martha's Vineyard, where it was an attempt to troll and shame them with the sanctuary cities, these people actually came together and provided necessary services and resources for these immigrants, which that backfired from Governor DeSantis. So that did make me feel good.
Yeah, I mean, there are a number of Republicans who said, the Democrats wouldn't, sanctuary cities wouldn't do anything when these people actually got there. And in fact, no, people rallied around to support these people and make sure that they had a warm place to sleep and food to eat. We know that politically, obviously, this is a winner for, I guess, conservatives, the right wing. Democrats, I think, are justifiably hating sort of what Republicans are doing. But where does this cut politically in the middle with moderate and independent voters?
Well, I think it's going to cut two ways. I think the primary cut is going to be how these, using these migrants as pawns, how that reflects our principles and values as Americans. And I would think that there are more Americans, particularly independents, people in the middle, that would see that this totally does not go along with our values and principles. But the other way that it cuts, and this is gonna hurt the Democrats, is we haven't heard an articulated solution in the face of this crisis, which I think we should have. I understand that there's only so much you can put out before the midterm elections. I understand that the White House is gonna be putting out something, I think, after the elections, but I think that actually might be a handicap for Democratic candidates, because there hasn't been an articulated strategy of exactly how to fix our broken immigration system.
And without that articulated strategy, I mean, you talk to Republicans and they perceive that the door is wide open, that the border is wide open to anybody who wants to cross. And there doesn't seem to be any sort of even pushback yet from sort of the Democrats as to, no, we are trying to control immigration. What should the proper immigration policy be, both in terms of its morality, but also in terms of the politics?
Well, I think for me, and I'm from North Carolina, but I have lived and studied in 3 continents. And so I've been on the receiving end of how immigrants are treated. And I would expect, just as the countries that I lived in, how I followed a process, that we should have a process here too. But now it should be a process that's funded and staffed so that it's realistic. So I think that, give people who are already here, particularly the dreamers, a pathway to citizenship, and have a process that's workable, doesn't have years waiting in line for those who want to come here, and an asylum and refugee system that is also workable. Now, there's one more element to it which is really complicated, and that's border security. And I think this is both Democrats and Republicans that I blame, more so the Republicans, and I'll tell you why. With the Democrats, because of the former president's "Let's build the wall," a lot of Democratic candidates have shied away from talking about border security, strengthening the border because under the last administration, it was so closely tied to ideas that were racist and xenophobic. But I do blame Democrats for not articulating that better. But with Republicans, I blame their rhetoric on immigration because, of course, they're always talking about build the wall, strengthen our border, but they do so in a way that reinforces that xenophobia and that racism, and they don't have anything after it. Because even Americans who think our border should be more secure don't think that we should build the wall and close the door, which is the only thing that I can gather Republicans have a plan to do.
It also feels like a lot of Americans felt, even if you support border security, there should not be this family separation policy that we saw during the last administration. That seemed to be sort of bipartisan outrage that people were being kept in cages and separated. It seems like the Biden administration has tackled that somewhat, but again, we haven't heard much about it.
Exactly, and that's unfortunate because we know even though the situation there are peaks and lows, of course, during the COVID pandemic, there was obviously changes in the pace of migration and it's picked up. We should be out there saying two things at once. That we have the principles that you mentioned that don't separate families, that don't do some of the horrible things that we saw during the last administration, but that also we're looking to fix this problem for those people who are here and those people who want to come. I personally am proud to live in a country where people are wanting to get here. And I honestly think that the immigrants that are coming, if we had a process that worked and was workable and reasonable, they would go through it.
There was a period about, and I guess going back to the Obama administration, when it seemed like there was a bipartisan comprehensive immigration bill that, I guess they called it the group of 12, the gang of 12 senators came together, and then it fell apart in large part, I think, for politics. Have we gone away now permanently from the opportunity when Democrats and Republicans can put aside whatever provincial political issues they have and come together with some sort of bipartisan solution? Or have things become so partisan in Washington that now it's impossible to get that kind of compromise?
I had to go back and remind myself of that proposed compromise or proposed bipartisan partnership that you just mentioned, because think about that today. That doesn't even seem like it could be something that would be possible. And I think the reason is, and this is unfortunate, is that after the Obama administration, when we started talking about what can we do, deal with the Dreamers, to deal with our asylum system for refugees, the immigration system got tied to crime. It got tied to disease. It got tied to every ill that some people in some states, some leaders did not want to find real solutions for. And I think what's going to be hard is you do have some Republicans who are willing to work on, common sense immigration reform with Democrats. However, the problem is that too much of it has been joined to crime and these other issues that it makes it hard for people who are in the middle to take a stand to support immigration reform because of what their constituents have been told that means.
I wonder if there's a level of frustration also among so many constituents, voters across the country. When we were talking to people at a Trump rally the other week, a number of people said, look, we feel badly for the people who are crossing the border and all the hardships they're going through, but they love the idea, these Trump supporters love the idea that, yeah, maybe we should dump these migrants next to the White House or in a Democratic city. Not so much because they were mad at the migrants, but they just wanted some attention to this issue. And it feels like maybe there's some political power and leverage there.
I think so, and I think that regardless of where most voters stand on the issue of immigration, I think that the political stunts, particularly with shipping people to outside of Vice President Harris's residence at rush hour, I mean that's trolling. That's not leadership. And I have friends in Florida, and my second or third reaction was, why is Governor DeSantis spending my friend's tax money displacing people from a state that's not his? I think most reasonable people realize that's not a solution. It's political, using people as political pawns, and doesn't help us solve the problem.
Any idea how this is cutting politically among Latinos in particular? Are they just as horrified as a lot of Americans are when they see people being used as props, or do they have a different perspective?
I think that's going to be interesting because one of the things we have to keep in mind is that the Latino community, the people who are, Latino Americans and those who are refugees or immigrants here, it's very diverse depending on where they're coming from. I think it's really interesting how the particular migrants that DeSantis was, sending to Martha's Vineyard were from Venezuela. I mean, it's a different community. I would hope that the Latino community would see that this does not benefit them. I'll tell you, as an African American, I often feel too when I see these things, it's against brown people, and so I'm worried they're not sending me anywhere because I was born here, but that feeds into the racism and xenophobia that we've seen. And so I hope that the Latino community will not support this and that we'll see that at the ballot box in November.
Yeah, I mean, I think the way this is going to cut politically is going to be intriguing because look, it's a high profile moment when you are able to move migrants, and it's a political stunt. And yes, these people's lives, they're being used as props, but Republicans seem gleeful over the images that they're able to create with this. And so we'll see how it cuts politically. Calvin Dark, he's a Democratic strategist, co-founder of RC Communications. Calvin, thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.
Good to be here.
You got it.